I'm pleased to announce that the two governments and the political parties of Northern Ireland have reached agreement.
It is 18 years since the Good Friday Agreement, 10 years since polar opposite parties shared power in Northern Ireland. But the relationship between the Democratic Unionists and Sinn Féin has gone up in smoke. A flawed renewable energy scheme had cost taxpayers an estimated £500 million, but the First Minister refused to step down during a public inquiry. So her coalition partner brought down the devolved government.
Good afternoon. In the last few moments, the deadline has passed for Sinn Féin to nominate a Deputy First Minister to replace Martin McGuinness. The Northern Ireland Secretary is expected to announce an election must now be called.
I'm hearing from sources at the Northern Ireland office that an election is likely to take place in Northern Ireland on Thursday, the 2nd of March.
No one should underestimate the challenge faced to the political institutions here in Northern Ireland and what is at stake.
9 months after the last election, Northern Ireland goes to the polls on Thursday. Parties will then have 3 weeks to form a new power-sharing administration or risk a return to direct rule from Westminster. When they needed help with peacemaking before, they found it 3,000 miles away, on the other side of the Atlantic. If there's anyone who might know how to fix Northern Ireland's devolved government, it's the American architect, the man who refused to give up until he had brokered the Good Friday Agreement. So we've come to New York to talk to him. Senator George Mitchell says he knew they had more work to do in Northern Ireland.
We recognised at the time the agreement was reached, and I said on that very day that by itself the agreement did not assure peace or prosperity or reconciliation. It made them possible. So what I said at the time is that it would take many years and many difficult decisions by courageous leaders in Northern Ireland to attain those goals.
Some have suggested that the United Kingdom's decision to leave the European Union could destroy the Good Friday Agreement. What are your thoughts about that?
I believe that the European Union was an important factor that led the United Kingdom and Ireland to cooperate in establishing a process that led to the Good Friday Agreement. And I think the UK being out of the European Union may reduce the prospects for further cooperation.
Northern Ireland, like Scotland, voted to remain in the EU. Republicans fear the return of a hard Irish border when the UK leaves. If ever they needed devolved government, it's now, ahead of Brexit negotiations. But the DUP leader says forcing parties into mandatory coalition does not produce stable government.
The fact that one party was able to plunge us into all of this election, a totally unnecessary election, Sinn Féin walking out of the executive was able to trigger that. So we may need to look at the whole system of government as to whether we can do things differently in the future.
Sinn Féin's new leader in Northern Ireland says it's too soon to consider voluntary power sharing.
I think that you have to realise that we are a society coming out of conflict. We can only be in government and share power with people who are absolutely wedded to the principles of the Good Friday Agreement and who absolutely have equality at the core of everything they do.
Other parties differ on the best form of government, but agree on the need for reconciliation.
If we keep electing two extreme parties, two parties that don't want to work together, that can't work together, then we're going to have problem after problem after problem, and we have to take opportunities now to vote for the middle ground.
I think next time there is a partnership in Stormont Castle, the seat of power of the executive, it has to be between two parties who are there not because the law says they have to share, but because they want to share.
I actually think the form of devolution that we have doesn't actually encourage people to cooperate, to work together. Consociationalism in the very rigid form that we have actually encourages people to retreat into their trenches at every election.
Senator Mitchell says the politicians themselves will know if it's time for a new structure.
Did you envisage that the mandatory coalition established under the agreement might one day become a voluntary coalition?
I think everyone anticipated that these arrangements were established to meet the problems and the needs of that time. And as is true of every society, and in particular democratic societies, changes in circumstance require changes in approach. So it is a normal part of the development of every society that over time institutions should be reviewed, processes should be reviewed, so long as the way you do it is through peaceful and democratic means.
At this integrated college in County Tyrone, Catholic and Protestant students work together. They can't understand why their politicians have not yet found a way to do so.
If we are children and the young people of Northern Ireland and we're in an integrated school and we have people of different religions and everything, then if we can all work together and get on, why can't the leaders of Northern Ireland do the exact same and work together as well to make a better Northern Ireland for people like us?
I think politicians really need to take a hard look at themselves and learn to put others' needs before their own. I feel like a lot of the time politicians act in what's best for their party or best for them in terms of staying in their position, as opposed to looking at what the people need and what the people want.
A small screen campaign for more schools to integrate has won backing from the big screen.
As Northern Ireland moves forward from division, who do we look to for a future we can share? Our children. So why continue to educate them apart? Different religions, different backgrounds, different schools. There is another way.
And the man who's lauded for his peacemaking skills says the politicians will find another way.
The real heroes of the Northern Ireland peace process were the political leaders of Northern Ireland and the people of Northern Ireland. It is they who made the crucial decisions, not me, not the prime ministers. It was those directly involved. It's fashionable in all of our societies to criticize, demean, ridicule political leaders, and often they deserve it. But on that occasion, men and women of great courage rose to the occasion and took a difficult decision in the interest of the people they represented. And that really must never be forgotten.
It will take a heroic effort, but the suspension of devolution would be the greatest setback here in a decade. So one man will be watching the politicians from a distance and willing them on.
I'm an American and proud of it, but a very large part of my heart, my emotions and my mind will always be in Northern Ireland.